School Committee. We'll begin as we always do with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. The Danvers Public Schools mission statement. The Danvers Public Schools is a dynamic community of independent learners dedicated to respect, responsibility, creativity, and the pursuit of academic and personal excellence. This meeting is being broadcast on Danvers Community Access Television. I hate to ask, is anybody in the audience also recording the proceedings? Okay, I got I want to say channel 7, 4, and 5, and citizen journalist Mark Zubrick. All right, anybody else?
Not recording, but it's just Mike.
I'm sorry?
I can hear you perfectly. It doesn't seem
Oh. Is this better?
Mike's
No.
really for TV.
Your mic?
No.
Yeah, I think those are mostly for TV. I'll try and talk loud. No one's ever accused me of not having a big mouth, so. All right. With that, we will turn to our agenda. And before we get into it, we all know that there are going to be a lot of questions and discussion tonight over the recent article in the Globe and things surrounding the recent article. And I know that there are a lot of passion in the room. So before we begin, when it comes time for public comment, I think people who by now know that they should sign up. I hope everybody that wants to speak has signed up. If you hear something and you decide you weren't intending to speak now, but you want to speak at the end of the meeting, that's fine too. Or the end of the public comment section, I apologize. We had overflow set up, but I don't know if we need it at this point. I think we're good right here. Our discussion really has to be held in a civil manner. Passion is admirable and even expected when you have any kind of an issue that really touches people, as I think this has. Passion is admirable, expected, and perfectly appropriate. Inappropriate language, personal attacks, things like that are not acceptable and they are out of order. Conduct that interferes with our being able to conduct the business of the meeting would also have to be considered out of order. In summary, if your concern is for our students, your children, and for the town of Danvers and our district, I hope that we'll all model the behavior that we hope that our young people will show. As always, there will be a 3-minute time limit for speakers. If you're in the middle of a thought, I'll try and let you finish that thought, regardless of the time, within reason. I also hope that if you plan to speak and someone else has essentially said what you were going to say, perhaps you can abbreviate your remarks so that we hear information that's new that you want us to share. But that's going to be to your discretion. So with that, I'm going to ask for, as we always do, items of interest to the superintendent, school committee, and community. But we are going to start with the community at this point. I'm sorry, strike that, the school committee. So obviously we know the main item of interest for all of us, and I would like to start with Jeff.
Nothing at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Robin.
Yes, I'm going to just pull this down so you can hear me a little bit clearer. So I just have a statement I'd like to read to the community. Now that a redacted version of the report is public, my focus still remains to work toward and create an environment in which our students can learn and thrive. Education doesn't always occur in a classroom. It also includes the extracurricular opportunities we provide them. We aim to give our students the skills to be successful in their lives beyond Danvers to compete in a global marketplace. The findings of the report are disappointing and unfortunate, but we must remain focused on the future, not the past. I was elected to the school committee in May. During my campaign, I spoke of the need to improve educational opportunities and being transparent about how we conduct ourselves. The findings of this report have not changed that focus. If anything, it proves we have a lot of work to do. I look forward to working with everyone in our community to ensure we learn from this and provide the best educational services our students deserve. With that, I would also like to motion at this time to put forth the vote to immediately put Dr. Dana on administrative leave while the school committee can ascertain the best path moving forward for administration and students.
There's a motion and no second.
I second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. I would see this motion as, because it involves personnel, the motion would be out of order. Having said that, the best and appropriate place for this to take place, the best discussion point would be for an executive session. And I am reluctant to go into executive session now, but that is certainly a choice that can be made. What is the pleasure of the committee?
Can we go into an executive session sometime this week?
Or immediately,
When you say immediately,
like right now.
right now, you want to
Yep.
go into executive session. All right. We are going to briefly, I hope, adjourn, and we will go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel issues. Could you poll the committee, Diane?
Bertrand? Bertrand?
Yes?
Apiscanis?
Yes.
Wallace Campbell?
Yep.
Jordan Doherty?
Yes.
Jeff Pettit?
Yes.
Open up.
Robin, do you have anything else to add to your statement beyond what you had already said, because you have the floor?
Nope, Mr. Crane, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Alice?
Yep, I'll read something I wrote. I do not believe appropriate action or discipline was taken following the independent investigation into the accusation of racism and hazing within our high school hockey program. It is unacceptable that not a single adult was held accountable. I believe with the lack of real action, we failed our students, teachers, parents, caregivers, and community members. We've been told that these actions do not reflect the core values, mission, and vision that we seek for our school system, but yet the lack of transparency in action says otherwise. As a parent, I sit here worried about what else has been hidden from us. We cannot accept no further action. I recognize that in order for all of us to move forward and focus on the safety and security of our school community, then we must hold an adult accountable for these accusations. Our current students and staff are suffering because of the inaction from our investigation. Finally, I want us as a community to acknowledge the victim who came forward. We all know that this was not isolated to you. I want to thank them for having courage. You're why we're here talking about this, and my hope is that it inspires action in us to be better and to do better for our Danvers school community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alice. Arthur?
Yeah, I think that obviously most people that are here, and including some of us on this at this table, certainly don't know all that's happened over the past 15, 16, 17 months. So, and these were all part of the meetings that we've had over the course from last June until the present, including regular meetings, subcommittee meetings. The facts have been talked about consistently from meeting to meeting. And I think it's important to just kind of run through a timeline of events of what's happened over that period of time. So that's what I'm going to do. And again, nothing that I'm saying here is not anything that you can't find from previous things that have happened with our committee over the past 16, 17 months. But the events that were the gist of the Globe story began really on June 11th of 2020 during a senior car parade that involved and we talked about this before, the unfurling of a Trump flag at that particular event. What was happening with the hockey team, whatever was happened, obviously had already happened. The season was long over. But the Trump flag incident resulted in a bunch of complaints from members of the community, families, and also resulted in one particular community member coming and calling the administration about some hockey allegations, and that was on June 13th. That was Saturday, June 13th. And Saturday, June 13th, the high school administration and the central office individual, and the police department was informed. The investigation began from Monday, the 15th of June until Wednesday, the 17th of June. The administration carried out an investigation and spoke with 18 of the 22 players on the team. 4 did not participate. This was done with the high school administration team. The 5 coaches were interviewed by the central office. The investigation continued into July. It went to the police department at that time. The police department investigated. It went to DCF as required at that time. DCF did whatever they do as far as investigating the matter. And in the end, the investigation by the police department and by the school all ended around middle of July of 2017, July 17, 2020. At that time, the police department did not take any action. As part of that interview or part of that investigation with the police department, all 15 players interviewed denied ever being assaulted or pressured to do anything as part of an initiation to the hockey team. All 15 players denied having any knowledge of any threats of actions by any member of the hockey team against another person that was based on a person's race, color, religion, national origin, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. Again, I'm not saying that what the individual, the victim has said is not true, but I'm telling you what we knew and what was going on at that particular time. The police department checked again with the AD's office. They determined that there was no action to take. DCF took no action. We determined at that time, or the administration determined at that time, that there'd be some appropriate discipline applied, and that it looked as though the matter was closed at that time. Again, based upon the information that we knew at that time. At that point, a few days later, maybe a month, maybe 2 or 3 weeks later, there was another allegation by members of the hockey team that they were being bullied. That was investigated. Shortly after that, there were other new allegations that were seen on social media. And so that led us to our August 2020 meeting. At that meeting, and if you haven't watched it, I would urge you all to watch it. If you don't think we're serious about this, I would urge you all to watch it. And we did a couple of things. The primary thing that we did was authorized the school attorney to hire an independent investigator to investigate this matter further, to determine what happened and to also determine what needs to be done relative to the cultural issues in our school. We did that. That was sent over. It was done over a period of 5 or 6 months. At that meeting, we also urged also instructed the superintendent to continue on with the diversity and inclusion and equity and cultural issues that we had been working on since the new strategic plan, and that was part of that meeting also. Again, take a look at it, see what was going on. If you haven't seen it, you should. Over the course of the next several months, we had several meetings. At each one of those meetings, we had an update as to what was going on with the investigation. We didn't do too much at that point in time, other than that, because we were waiting for the investigation to come out. The investigation came out in March, and in March, and by the way, the investigation, she was able to talk to probably about 23 of the 73 people that she wanted to. If you watch our meetings from August, September, October, November, December, January, you will find us all the time saying, please, if the investigator reaches out to you, please, we would hope that you would talk to them. We can't make them, but we would hope that you would talk to the investigator and so that she can do a full and thorough examination. The investigation came back. The investigation really did not find, the investigation did not find any evidence of any inappropriate action on as far as the coaches, except for that they should have had the door open some while the kids were in there showering and changing. That was the extent of the findings of that investigation relative to any adults that may have been involved. So some on the committee may want to have an adult just because we need to have an adult, and whether the adult has culpability or not, but I don't know if scapegoating is really a smart thing to do. I would watch the March 21st meeting where we talked about the report to the extent that we can, because we are very limited by law as to privacy issues relative to primarily our students. We cannot obviously identify students. We cannot identify information that's going to lead to the identity of students. Our job is to protect the students, even students that you may not be happy with right now. That's our job. And that's what we did. And that's what the superintendent has always done. And that's what we did here. At that meeting, the superintendent also ran through a plethora of things that we were doing and are going to do and extend relative to, again, equity, inclusion, cultural things that are very important and that we want our students to be well versed in. And I believe that Lisa, you may want to talk more about that, or I think Adam is here to address some of the things that are going on in high school. So I would like to hear that as soon as possible. Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
From March to November, the Globe would like you to believe that the innocent bystanders who just weren't given the records. Well, the Globe wanted all of the records. They wanted everything. They wanted all the names. They wanted everything that was in there. And so that results in a lawyers going back and forth to determine what documents are going to be provided and what documents are not going to be provided, what information can be provided, what information cannot be provided. Once again, and if you haven't, read the laws, read the privacy laws. They're very interesting and they're very specific and they're very limiting as to what we can do and say. Once we got that process over, we gave, with the help of the what is it, Keith, the Public Records Administrator,
the state supervisor of public
and
records.
got both sides to agree to a certain level of redactions, and we think at that point it protected our kids to the extent that we can protect them. So that's what's happened. So if you think that we haven't done anything about this or focused on this for the past year and a half, and that we took it in any way lightly, or that we brushed it off, or as some people in here like to say, swept it under the rug, that's a bunch of crap. Okay? This and the pandemic have been the primary focus of what we've been doing in here for the past year and a half. You know, when something happens that you don't know about and you can't know about what's going on in the locker room, what you do is you respond and you act and you do whatever you can to hopefully not have that happen again. That's not always going to be successful, because we're dealing with a lot of people from a lot of different places and a lot of different backgrounds, and people are going to occasionally slip up and do something that they shouldn't do. You know what? We do the best that we can. But again, to infer that this was kept under the rug, go back and watch every single meeting we've had since last June, because I'm sure none of you that are saying that have done it. By the way, nobody ever called us about it. Nobody ever talked to us about it. We urged people, if they had questions, to get in touch with us. Nobody ever called me. Nobody ever emailed me. Nobody ever reached out to me. Not one person, while we were trying to get people involved in the investigation, not one person ever reached out. That's okay. Fine. It's all right. But, you know, the funny thing is the Globe writes a story from a perspective. Now, the Globe wants to sell papers. We care about the kids. The Globe doesn't care about the kids. It wants to sell papers. So the Globe writes a story, and all of a sudden, everybody's like up in arms. Where was everybody the past year and a half? Because we've been doing this for a year and a half. Well, you know what? Watch TV, watch the school committee, come to the meetings.
We're not going to have, we are not going to have back and forth from the committee and the audience like this. If you are listed to speak, then you will speak in turn like everybody else. This is not going to turn into a dialogue with yelling. It's just not. We're not going to conduct this meeting that way.
I'm good.
All right, thank you. Arthur has talked about a great deal of the detail here. I think if you, all I can add to that, what Arthur has said in terms of the timeline and whatnot, is that it bothers me more than anything that people are thinking that we, you know, covered up something because the Boston Globe said so. I know I spoke about the particulars to the extent that I could at the inclusion meetings. And there are a couple of members here who will undoubtedly remember me bringing that up and talking about it. We used words like abhorrent. We made it clear during the course of our discussions that there were things that could have had racist overtones, homophobic overtones. What we didn't do was give explicit detail. So let's talk about the only things that were not perfectly public. Obviously, the names of the students, which we couldn't. Information that would allow anyone to identify the students, which we could not put out there. Personnel issues. When you talk about, you know, what discussions regarding someone's job, whose ever job it might be, they are not fodder for the public. They simply aren't. If that's something that people disagree with, you need a change in a place much higher than this. And finally, yes, the explicit details, which one could have allowed students to be identified, and two, and maybe more importantly, think about the fact that, okay, seniors had graduated. The seniors on the team had graduated by the time this came out. By the time we knew about it, they had. You still have juniors moving up. You have sophomores moving up who still have to be part of the Danvers High School community, who are going to school every day. Would it have served their emotional or physical safety, particularly their emotional safety? Would it have helped them to have details about any of the conduct that we acknowledged publicly was inappropriate, and like I say, words like abhorrent? Would that have served their emotional safety in this school had we come out with it publicly? So we tried to be as transparent as we could within what the law allowed us and within the goal to foster student safety. And whether you like it or believe it or not, you know, the other thing is that, yeah, there were students who probably participated, you know, if I say willingly or unwillingly, or went along with it, 15, 16, 17 years old. Do any of you, do any of us, sitting out in that audience or sitting up here, you want to be judged by the worst thing you did when you were 16 or 17 years old? Do you want your something like this, especially if you weren't willing and you didn't come forward to talk about it because you wanted to put this behind you? Do you want that following you around forever? Do you want that to be the fodder for the press? Do you want your schoolmates to know about any of this that went on from your own emotional standpoint? So yeah, we didn't name names and we didn't explicitly talk about the conduct, but it made it perfectly clear that there are issues of racism, issues of homophobia, and inappropriate conduct on that team at that time. And I know that at different times I've talked about the fact that it's not just a problem from the school standpoint. We have seen so much go on in this community in the last year that goes beyond this particular event or what has happened in the schools. And there's disagreement. Some people say, oh, there's just it's just a few people in this town, racism, homophobia, not really a problem, just a few bad apples. Other people think it's pretty systemic and have been vocal about it. And the fact is, I think it's something that as a town, not just the schools, but with town citizens, central government, we have to consider, are we really the welcoming town that we want to be? Are we teaching our students how to act appropriately and what they should be doing and to be accepting of others? We have 15% roughly students now who are not, I believe it's 15%, who are not Caucasian. We are changing as a town. We are changing as a community. We have to open our arms and our hearts and accept that change because it's a good change. It makes us a better community. It makes us stronger. So this is what's happening here, and what is happening in this town is something everyone has to deal with. We're trying to deal with it through the ways that Lisa has talked about in the past, and Adam will talk about what's happening at the high school now. The central government is considering a full-time position. I believe it's an equity person versus inclusion, but it might be inclusion, as was recommended by the study group that took place over late last year. I'm sure every department in town is recognizing that we need to look at our hearts and look at who we are and what we're doing. The other factor here that has to be looked at is it's not just about teachers and coaches, it's also about parents and citizens. And do you think that the parents, there are students who apparently on an off, and I think Arthur brought this up, it's not a school-related chat group. It wasn't on school property. It wasn't on school equipment. But my point is, we acknowledge that there were things that students were saying in that chat group that were totally inappropriate. Do you think that their parents knew about it and let it happen? Or do you think their parents were mostly caught by surprise like most of us would have been? Do you think that in some cases what students are hearing in the home, or the attitudes that they're picking up in the home, in the community, in the news, in the world, are impacting the things that they are saying? So yeah, this is a problem that we're trying to deal with in terms of the culture of the school and the district. But it's not just a school problem. It's a problem that goes beyond us into the greater community. We're committed to trying to make a difference here on the front lines, but it's going to take parents, it's going to take citizens, it's going to take groups like our inclusion committee who do wonderful work. I think that we'll get there, but changing the culture is going to take some time. And I realize I've drifted off in a different direction than just the issue of the whether we were, fully disclosed things. We disclosed what we could, but this has opened eyes and minds to, I think, or at least it should, to bigger issues that involve just this room here and just the school district. So that is my point. Arthur, you had asked that we hear from Adam.
Yep.
Early in the process.
I'd like to hear, because we're talking about it now, I'd like to hear from him now.
All right, and maybe parents will have questions about that too. So Adam, if you can talk about what we're doing at the high school.
When my administrative team and I began our work at Danvers High School 2 months ago, we, alongside our faculty and students, committed to building and maintaining a safe and respectful environment. More importantly, we're dedicated to holding our community members and ourselves accountable. When mistakes are made, we'll learn from them. Today, I addressed all students and faculty to not only acknowledge the Boston Globe article, but to ask for everyone to come together in our school to continue to work to make it a better place. Tonight, I ask for the help and support of the entire Danvers community. This work is long, and it's a deliberate process. I'm proud of the work that we've had so far during this 2021-2022 school year, but the Globe article reinforces that our work can never stop, and we must be ever vigilant against acts of hate and inclusion. So far, we've trained all our athletes and coaches in anti-bias work and safety work around their behavior on their teams. We've supported the growth of student groups and student voice. We value the voice of our students. We want to hear from them. They help us understand what we need to do at our school. We continue to examine our curricula to make sure that it provides all perspectives and allows all to have a seat at the table. As a new administrative team at the high school, we are doing our best to practice an open door policy and to provide access to us, whether that's families, whether that's students or staff. We've set a goal to be as visible as possible in the hallways and in our school to try to provide support and a safe environment. We're building an infrastructure that we believe will help the culture improve at Danvers High School. And our hope is that we'll have the opportunity to continue this work this year and eventually reach a goal of a more inclusive and respectful school. And I'd be happy to answer any specific questions about some of the programs that we've started and the work that we still need to do.
Are there questions for Adam at this time?
Are you asking the community?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about your community block, if you've seen success in it, and how you're measuring success as well?
So community block is a process that the high school began before I took over as principal last spring. Our students, our faculty decided that we needed a new approach to advisory and to building smaller communities within the larger high school community. When I was hired for the position in the spring, I joined the committee that was made up of faculty and students to help develop a new way for us to build community and build opportunities for dialogue and work to happen in the school day. So it begins with, we changed our schedule. We dedicate daily a 25-minute period where every student is assigned to a community block. Those blocks are overseen by 2 to 3 faculty members, and those communities will remain consistent during a child's entire time at Danvers High School. That speaks to the idea that work around building culture is not something that's going to happen overnight. We're not going to assembly our way out of these issues. We need to build what I like to say is infrastructure, an infrastructure so that this work can happen. That began with looking at how we put these groups together. We spent a lot of time over the summer based upon student interests, some information that students provided to us and teachers to trying matching up and coming up with smaller communities that would make sense, that would fit, so that students would feel comfortable. We then began the year with, at first, adults leading some of the activities that happen at those. At the same time, we have a group of leaders, student leaders, that take a course that trains them to facilitate various activities that happen in what we call community meeting. So that's one of the places where we'll begin to see work around harder discussions around diversity or equity or issues that come up, like the Globe article. We also built in regular assemblies so that myself, our administrators can meet with the entire class at a time. So we have a junior class assembly, a senior class assembly. And those are opportunities to discuss expectations. This week we're talking about Veterans Day. So those assemblies provide us with the grade level community and gives us a chance to work with them and try to make sure that we can have those dialogues with a larger group. And then we also have what's called focus time. And this is where it's a more individual basis. This is a chance for kids to make academic progress, to get extra help, or to maybe engage in meetings with faculty or even some self-care activities depending upon their stress level. This is one part of what we're doing. It's not the only thing, but for us it represents a fundamental change in how we do business at the high school. And I believe it represents a collaborative effort. It's not a perfect process. We're not going to say the community block is going to solve everything, but we believe that it provides the beginnings, a foundation from which we can change the culture of the school in a variety of groups. So that's something that we've now been doing since the start of the school year, and the student facilitation has now begun.
You referenced some other programs. Can you talk a little bit about some of those too? So while I wasn't at the school, after some of the incidents involving the hockey team, there was a concerted effort to begin to work with student athletes and to make sure that they're provided with the proper understanding of bias and hazing and behavior that can emerge in a sports team or a sports culture. That training began with the athletes at the time, and we've continued that. So now all of our athletes have gone through training around anti-bias and around being positive and respectful members of our community. We've built it in so that annually freshman athletes will get that training once they come to the high school, so that it will continuously sustain itself in the years to come. And we're dedicated to that. It's part of our Atlas and Athena training, which looks at a variety of positive decision-making and just different protective factors that are important for our student athlete population. Our goal is to extend that anti-bias training to the entire student body. So that's something that we're going to work on this year, and we hope that by the end of the year, all of our students will have gone through that experience as well. We even helped train other athletes in our athletic conference in the same experience this year. Mr. DeMoro, who's here tonight, participated in that. So that's another program that we have. There's been a lot of focus on training for our staff, an emphasis on procedures and protocols, making sure that when we're taking trips or we're in after-school activities, that there is the proper emphasis on supervision and on communication, so that if there is a problem, we get the information right away and that we can communicate to families right away. And we think that speaks to transparency as well. So those are some of the things that are sort of in plan. I'll also add that in response to the Globe article, today I addressed the student body. Tomorrow we're going to be communicating about opportunities where students will have a chance to meet in smaller groups and share how they're feeling about things, share where we need to go. And again, I want to emphasize, we by no means feel we're there, but we are dedicated to this work. I feel our faculty is dedicated to this work. I know our students are dedicated to it. And again, we're going to need help from the community to move past this as well and move on from it and learn from it. How are you seeing the kids as far as like kind of buy-in? Are they good with everything that's going on?
Are they good with
of all the things that we're implementing?
I think, you know, and maybe Lil will help me out later at some point tonight, but I think community block is a good first step. But it's not the only step. And I think we still have a lot of work to do. There are definitely kids in our building that are still not comfortable and they still don't feel like their voice is being heard. But I believe we're building the structure to allow those voices to be heard. I think overall community block has been a good start to our year. I think it's allowed us to have relationships be established with adults other than your classroom teacher. And I think that's very valuable because those are the people that kids are going to go to when they have a problem or they need help. So I think we have a good foundation, but we still have a lot to work to do.
Thanks, Adam.
Any other questions?
Just on the point of feedback, we talk about this a lot, I think, with students, and not just in this context, but others. But the point about understanding not just what students are thinking, but what they're feeling and where they're coming from is beyond important, and is not just about doing a survey, it's about listening. So that's the first point. So I would be interested in receiving some regular updates as to not just for these small groups, but what we've been doing over time to listen and understand the processes that happen when students bring forward these issues. Because I know we have very formal processes in place. They're in our student handbooks for certain situations. But I do want to understand that our policies and procedures regarding that going forward are sound and they contribute to the well-being of everybody, number one. Number two is it's important, and we have Danvers Cares and other community options available. This is not just a school issue. We have faith partners. We have others in the community who are important business leaders who are participating in Danvers Cares and want to help and are able to help. And if they are not already brought in, and we try to bring them in, we have regular updates, and we'll hear regular updates from them as well. All of these folks need to have a voice in this. And maybe, you know, we need to listen a little bit better there. We need to highlight what they're saying a little bit better, because somehow a lot of us are not listening to what is happening and needs to come together. So thank you for this, and please encourage students. There are other avenues to communicate, not just in school, but some of these other community programs that we have as well.
I'd add we will be at the next Human Rights and Inclusion Committee meeting. We've been working with them to identify students that would be willing to serve on that committee and share their perspectives. So I know we have that meeting this month, and we have a group of students that are going to be involved with that. We have a number of students that will serve on our school council, and part of our plan is to emphasize student voice and to continue to expand that, because it really is key to what we're trying to do. So we'll continue to look for those opportunities.
Thank you.
All right, Adam, thank you. Before we go to the public, Lisa, do you have anything you want to say at this time?
Thank you. To continue with at the district level. So my commitment is to focus on our students' academic, social, and emotional well-being. My decisions are based on the impact of our students at the district level, based on the information from last year, the steps that we have taken. We have reviewed with the policy subcommittee and revised our process for communicating our expectations with all faculty, staff, and coaches. We have made refinements to our students' investigation procedures and reviewed them with our administrators and our school attorney. As Adam, Mr. Federico has shared, we have updated our trainings with our student athletes, but also with our coaches training, and that will be an ongoing basis for each season. We have updated our mandatory trainings for all staff to include specific school committee policies in the acknowledgement of the entire policy manual. As a school committee, worked with school committee for the vote for a anti-racist resolution in August of 2021. We continue to, at all of our levels, to educate all of our students as part of our district goals and action plans, and that is part of tonight's presentation on our diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And we continue with professional development for our administrators and staff. Thank you.
And Lil Montevecchi is our student representative. They go to the high school. And Lil, do you have anything you want to add to the discussion at this point before we go to the parents?
Sure.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
We continue to look for new members to expand the Anti-Discrimination Club. We are looking forward to partnering with the Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee this year. The reason why the Anti-Discrimination Club has not run yet this year is because membership has been very low. Okay. Is the mic on?
I think these mics don't really work.
Okay. Okay. We continue to look for new members to expand the Anti-Discrimination Club. We are looking forward to partnering with the Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee this year. The reason why the Anti-Discrimination Club has not run yet this year is because membership has been low, and especially in light of recent events, I encourage any and all students to reach out to me if they are interested in participating. The goal of the Anti-Discrimination Club is to foster an inclusive, welcoming, and accepting school environment, which can only be achieved through continued staff and student involvement. Improving our school culture cannot happen overnight. It will take commitment on the part of our school leaders and the student body to work together to stand up and speak out against prejudice in all forms. Thank you.
thank you, Lil. All right, with that, thank you for your patience. Do we have the list, Diane? Thank you. All right, it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people who have signed in to speak. The first name on the list is Bob Gamer. We want you to go to the podium, please, Bob, and tell the town who you are and what you have to say.
Good evening. I'm Bob Gamer, a member of the Danvers Human Rights and Inclusion Committee. I have a deep and abiding love for Danvers. I plan to spend the rest of my days in this town. My 4 children are proud graduates of our schools. The appalling events that have taken place, the incidences of racism, homophobia, and anti-Semitism are like a blot attaching to my own family. The trauma sustained by the innocent victims can only be described as unspeakable. We all agree that grave mistakes were certainly made. Mistakes were made by the actual perpetrators, the students. Mistakes were made by those who should have known better, the adults. The question remains, is retribution the answer? Firstly, as to the students, in my family, would I disown a member guilty of such egregious wrong? Most certainly not. Instead, what is needed is education, a lot of it. It's the culture they live by that needs a whole lot of redressing. As they are at the age when their brains are still in the formative stage, hopefully they will come to understand the wrongs they did and regret them, rather than feel that they are stigmatized for life. A deep apology to the victim, the affected young man, must be in order, must be mandatory. As for the adults, it can be argued, of course, that termination, failure to disclose, remains one of the recourses. Some have already been removed from their positions, others transferred. In the rush to judgment, is this the intelligent play, though? Adults err, sometimes grievously, as obviously happened here. Frankly, they screwed up royally. But I also believe that these are essentially good, decent people. But I also believe that they have the maturity to see better, to learn from whatever transgressions they engaged in. There is such thing as mitigated forgiveness, given that the corrective measures are in place, as you all heard they are, and on a large scale. A firing squad won't cleanse matters. It's revenge, not do justice. As a family, we need to love one another again. As corny as that sounds, it's true. I submit, ladies and gentlemen, that this is the only way to heal. which in the end must be our overall object. Toxicity is leading us in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Our next speaker is Karen Ranieri. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Eric. How are you?
I'm fine. I hope you're well.
This is not a direct quote, but this is some of the words from Lisa Dana from the Globe article as part of her response. We do not tolerate racist, sexist, homophobic, anti-Semitic language and actions. It is important for us as community leaders and educators to help our students realize the power of their words and decisions. I submit that not only was it tolerated, that firsthand accounts of violent sexual abuse from minor children were dismissed. It was concealed from families. It was concealed from the community that you folks were entrusted to lead. Instead of ethical and transparent words and decisions, you ensured that these behaviors were institutionalized into the schools by rehiring a perpetrator before the investigation was even complete. The school district paid $44,000 for this investigation, the words of which remain highly redacted even after repeated court battles. I am not, and mine is not, a Danvers hockey family. When I posted the school committee time, I was contacted by some. I heard heartache. To those people who are reliving this now, I'm sorry. To the current families, I send you my sympathy because you've trained and you've invested and you've built a whole hockey family, and you will be unfairly vilified because this was handled poorly. I do not have confidence in the superintendent, nor in the committee members who were involved in this long-term investigation, and I ask that they resign. It is important for us as Danvers families to help our school committee realize the power of their words and decisions. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Cindy Mcmahon. Cindy?
Hi, my name is Cindy. I'm a Danvers resident and I'm a parent of middle schoolers.
Welcome.
And I came out here tonight because I really wanted to support the victim and any students that are suffering because of this and the future students who are coming up through this school system. I think it's important to be brave, and it's important that we tell our kids to tell the truth. So I have a question based on the Globe article that I understand not everyone on the school committee believes was accurate. But I wanted to know what a resource officer's role is in our school and the interaction that they have with our children. I would like to know why the renewal for this contract for this person was re-signed in the middle of the investigation. I also want to know how long that contract is supposed to last, and I'd like to know what your decision is when it's time for renewal. I'd really like you to explain the decision-making process based on the evidence that you saw and that you heard. Thank you.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'll unpack what I can. First of all, the particular, I assume you're referring, Cindy, where are you? I assume you are referring to the hockey coach? The current resource officer, the community. Right, but in terms of, we don't hire the resource officer, first of all. That he's a police officer. He's part of the collective bargaining unit with the Danvers Police. So it's not someone we go out and hire or interview, or we don't make the hiring. Now, hang on a sec. So are you concerned about him still being, are you concerned about him still being the resource officer? You know he's not the coach. Stop. Stop. Go back to the microphone, please, Cindy.
Yes.
I'm just looking for the truth.
Right, but what is the question?
I don't want you to get defensive. I really just
No.
want to know
Sure.
who signed the contract for his renewal. The Globe says that the superintendent signed it
As a coach or as the resource officer?
as the resource officer.
Okay. Lisa, you want to speak to that?
No, as the superintendent, I do not sign any contracts with our police department. It's the police department that assigns and works with us to assign a school resource officer.
Okay. And as a police officer, as I said, he is subject to the collective bargaining contract with the police. The town has a contract with the police union.
Well, I would ask the school committee to really ask these questions. And if you can please, he's a police officer.
Is this particular
a
person
position
still
of
the resource
power?
officer, Lisa?
No.
He
No.
is a mentor to other police officers in our school. He's
He's
you
not.
have to put some more thought into.
He's no longer the resource officer. No, he's not.
Yes, he is. He is.
I think he's asking where he is.
Clarification, he's currently the sergeant for the juvenile division
Right.
and not a school resource officer in any one of our individual schools.
Okay, he's not the resource officer.
Factually, he's just not. I mean, who are the current resource officers?
We have Officer Smith at Danvers High School. There's Officer Skane at the middle school. And then there's Officer Chase at Essex Tech. And then the 3 school resource officers share responsibilities for the 5 elementary schools.
Okay.
There's a sergeant in charge of the juvenile division, which is Steve Baldessari.
But there is I'm going to ask for order. There is a difference between the school resource officer assigned to the schools and the juvenile division run by the police. It's not the same thing.
By the way, it's not our choice.
Yeah, it's not our place to decide who the police choose to put in charge of the juvenile division. Oh my God. Okay. Debbie Joyce is our next speaker.
I know. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Debbie Joyce, and I'm the proud mother of a Danvers High School hockey player. First and foremost, I want to address all the people who are passing judgment on every child who is on the 2019-2020 hockey team. You may have read things you believe is true because 1, the internet doesn't lie, and 2, journalism isn't twisted to fit an agenda. I'm going to tell you my son's experience on the 2019-2020 hockey team. My son was a freshman. I repeat, he's a 15-year-old freshman on the hockey team. My son was never sexually assaulted or witness to any sexual assault. My son is not a racist or homophobic or part of a white supremacy group, as many social media bullies have stated. I've read on social media how the coach was on the group text with the boys and how could he condone the words used in the text chain. Let me enlighten you. The coach was not on the group texts with the boys. Coach Baldessari to my child was nothing but welcoming and always made my child feel safe and respected and welcoming to any issue he may have had, and never made my child feel that he couldn't go to him. In fact, he made sure to ask them periodically how the season was going, exactly what a coach should be doing. He added so many positive experiences to my son's freshman year that when these allegations came out, we were shocked and surprised. As many people have shouted, where was the coach? In my opinion, the coach should not be in the locker room when our boys are changing. A child should be able to tell a parent something happened to them. That parent should have been reported the allegation incident. You, Ms. Doherty, are quoting and demanding transparency on the Boston Globe article. As a school committee member and a teacher, you should know that the school's job is to protect the children. Why would you feel that the public shaming of children should be allowed? If you were a parent, you'd be able to understand that a child should be protected by the adults surrounding them. When allegations were made, the school did an internal investigation. Nothing was determined to move forward. People weren't happy with that, so the police department did an investigation. Nothing was determined. So again, people weren't happy because they were not getting the answers that they wanted. So a private investigation was conducted and nothing was determined to be wrongdoing or the school with the team, the coaches, and again, people aren't happy. 3 separate parties determined that nothing happened. I would also like to set the record straight. Coach Baldessari was reinstated, coached to the end of the season, was offered to coach again this season. He made his own decision to not coach this year. Why this was being pursued by the media again, I don't know. 16 of the kids aren't here anymore. The coaches aren't here coaching anymore. The adults bullying and shaming of our families on social media are appalling, and all of you participating should be embarrassed. Get your facts from the sources before you judge, because that is what you are all doing. You have plastered a scarlet letter and had a witch trial without an actual trial, and you've become the judge and the jury. You're in fact the bigger bullies in this case. How would you feel if your son or daughter that may or may not have written something or sent a picture of themselves in an inappropriate manner privately, and then it was plastered everywhere and taken out of context? Everyone always has the opinion of not my perfect child. No person in this room is perfect. No person in this room has the perfect child. They make mistakes, and you hope and you pray that they learn from them. It is our job as parents to make sure that they are handling themselves correctly, that they understand how to lose with grace, and that not everyone is deserving of a trophy. There are people that have spoken tonight or will speak tonight that in fact have bullied or have in fact lied on their social media, that they in fact made themselves out to be a victim for attention or to push their own agenda. You need to stop. Did any of you ever think that the mental abuse that these kids have had to withstand and the public ridicule that they have endured and the colleges that they have lost is not enough? When people posted parts of their text threads on social media and senior boys were being told by other senior girls that they should kill themselves, They have had more real world experience than any adult has had to endure, I'm sure. They have learned and are learning from their teammates' past actions and are trying to grow in a more positive light. You as adults should be setting examples instead of feeding your own agenda on how you feel something should go. This is why young adults commit suicide, false media reporting, and one-sided opinions. The school committee needs to do better for protecting our children, and the superintendent's administration needs to be better at communicating, but more importantly, the public needs to do better. Stop with the shaming and be part of the change. I want to thank you, Arthur, because you have been there for the boys. I want to thank Adam for being there for the kids. And Lisa, I just wish you would address this a long time ago in a more open forum to get these people to understand these boys' lives are private. You all had no business going at this and thinking that you have the right to know what happened. There's a victim, but there are 21 other kids a part of that. 21 other kids that are victims because they don't agree with one allegation. They don't agree with that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Lisa, you're next. Lisa Silva. Good evening, Lisa.
Good evening. First and foremost, I'd like to commend the victim, the young man that came forward to talk about what happened to him on school property. And I really want to talk about what happens.
I have to clarify one thing, Lisa. It wasn't school property.
In the locker room.
Not at the school.
Okay.
But that's okay. I'm sorry.
During school sports.
Yes.
Under the supervision of a Danvers Public Schools employee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm up here to tell him that he is brave and he represents a very courageous soul. More courageous than probably a lot of us sitting in this room. As a young adult, he had the wherewithal to understand what was happening to him, to not blame his teammates, and to understand that they were all victims. Because as adults, we need to do better and we know better. There is a pattern in this school, and all you have to do is walk down the hallways. And you guys can hide behind the new principal and all of the things that are happening now, but that does not change the fact of what happened in that locker room. Boys that are sexually abused, boys that are bullied, boys that are beaten with dildos on the face because they won't yell the N-word with the hard R or participate in Gay Tuesday, grow up to be abusers. You are all complicit. I have a 10-year-old who's being called gay at a Danvers Public Elementary School. I have friends whose children are being followed home and being called the N-word because they have dark skin. This is a huge problem. And we're hiring a coach who is not only a police officer, the resource juvenile supervisor, or whatever he is, and also is a figure that these boys are never going to question. All you have to do is walk down the hallway. The hockey team was laughing about it today. They think they've gotten away with something. They think they're protected by this police officer. They think they can do whatever they want.
Did you walk down the hallway today?
Let's
Because I did.
let's not have arguments back and forth in the audience,
And
please.
somebody was ridiculing a hockey player. Okay? Calling them names. Who's going to protect the innocent?
We're going to stop this, please. No.
All right?
There is nobody in this room that wants to see any student held accountable for this. We have never asked you for the students' names. And I've met with Lisa Dana. I've met with Steve Bartha. I've met with the Human Rights and Inclusion Committee about all of this stuff. So please don't say that no parents have come to you, the school committee, or the superintendent to talk about this. I've known about this for 16 months. And I let everybody do their investigation. Well, when the police department investigates the police department, it doesn't really turn out that well. Everybody here is just covering yourself. We checked the box. My kid is not safe at school. My middle schooler is not safe at school. I don't want somebody who allowed these types of things to happen to be
Allegedly, Lisa.
We're not going to have give and take.
You had your time up here.
You have to stop.
Allegedly.
I get that passions are running
Again,
high.
nobody is blaming your child. Nobody is saying anything about your child. Your child is a victim. And whether or not they had to experience this or they saw it, why would this person come up and lie that he was sexually abused? Do you know how much bravery and courage that took?
I don't think, Lisa, none of us up here anyway have said that he didn't, that what happened, what he said happened didn't happen. We never took that position.
Why was he not believed? Why was he offered no support or services or health services or support? Why was he not offered anything like that?
I don't know, and we don't know what interplay happened between that particular student and the school in terms of health and the family.
School. You don't know what happened between that student and the school, Eric.
We don't.
You're the school committee chairperson.
We're not allowed to understand anything to do with the student's health or privacy, Lisa. We have repeated that I'm not going to get into
So
an
was any mental health services or support offered to this student?
You don't have the right to know that, and neither do I. It is a private matter between that student, his parents, the school, and maybe his physicians. I don't know, but I'm telling you, you don't have the right to know that. It can't be helped. And you have to respect that. They have a right to their private life beyond.
When they are.
Doesn't matter. They have a right to their private life in terms of
So
any
you
medical
can't say
treatment.
that you offered it to him and
No.
and what he did or didn't do.
No.
All right. Well.
Mark Smith, please, if he's still here. Mark, are you here?
I'm here, but I'm going to yield since my point of topic was not the topic that's of concern to everybody tonight. So I'll wait till the next school committee meeting.
Okay. Well, you're the last speaker. Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay. Will you state your name for us, please?
Sorry, I had to write it down because I didn't plan on speaking, so I just wrote it over there. I'm Jessica McGraw. Just to be transparent, I emailed both Lisa Dana and Jason Calabino as soon as the parade happened.
Mm-hmm.
And as one of the very few mothers of a student of color who attended DHS, I am beyond disgusted by the actions of the hockey team. To have friends emailing us, texting us to say they cannot imagine how our son must be feeling is both reassuring and sad. The parents and coaches should be ashamed. As far as the district, you say you are going to work to bring more equity and inclusion to the Danvers Public Schools. So I ask you, why did you pull the book stamped from the elementary curriculum? That was done last week.
Lisa, do you
By
want
Dr.
to?
Dana.
We can talk about that, or Mary, anyone on curriculum want to talk about that?
It will be part of the presentation under our diversity, equity, inclusion. And it was only put on pause at the moment for us to continue to do the work to make sure that we were prepared as adults and working through that book with our children.
Yeah, so it's only it's been temporarily. Basically, it's going to be covered. It's going to be read, just temporary.
And we really need to be learning about equity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
The book stamped was pulled from the curriculum for our elementary students.
Temporarily.
Okay.
And it'll give our teachers a chance to understand better how to teach it.
But
and
they've
how to
worked
work
for
with
that. They worked on that for almost a year now.
I understand.
So
but
they planned it for a year.
It is temporarily, and it will be part of the curriculum. Anyone else? Let's see. Whoop.
Hi, I'm Robin Healy. It's going to be very brief. I have to say that as a parent, at first,
Wait 1 sec. We have to be clear. You are my wife.
yes, I am Eric Crane's wife. Also, as a parent, I have two children at DHS who've been here since freshman year. They are now in the special ed program. But in any case, I was appalled when I heard this whole thing in the beginning, and I still am. And I was where you all are. Ask Eric. I was where you all are. Oh my God, you're all covering. You're sweeping it under the rug. But you know, when I started thinking about it more deeply, if I have a child on the hockey team and all of this is released, and it's released that people are getting hit in the face with a sex toy. I have a 15-year-old boy on the hockey team. Do I want people thinking my child has been hit in the face with a sex toy? Do I want people thinking that my child is dancing around naked in a locker room in the dark with his teammates? I don't want that. You know, yes, this is a very horrible situation. And again, I see both sides of it. But that's what it's really come down to. I feel like not releasing information has protected kids. I completely believe this one boy who came forward. I believe that he is telling the truth about what happened to him. And this is all my personal feelings. I also believe that it may have gone on to other people, and they are not stepping forward out of fear of being bullied about it, out of fear of people knowing. However, the vilifying of the entire hockey team, the way people are doing, is just awful. When you spoke, it really hit me. It is, every child on that team was not involved in whatever may have happened. And I don't think it's fair to those kids that this all gets blown all out there like it has been. I wouldn't want to be 15 walking down the hallway and thinking all these other people think I'm dancing naked with my male teammates and getting hit in the face with a sex toy. That's all I got.
Thank you. You can tell I don't tell her what to say. Someone else, please. Anyone else, please. Are there any other people who wish to speak? No? Oh, whoop. Oh, I'm sorry. Julie Curtis. My apologies, Julie.
My name is Julie Curtis, and I am a citizen of Danvers. And I just have two concerns with this whole thing. And one is that a police officer investigated another police officer. That's, to me, is a conflict of interest. The other thing is that, and Dr. Dana, I'm going to apologize if I'm wrong. I'm going on what the Globe said, that in fact, while this was going on, you in fact voted for him not to keep the job and you gave him a raise. Is that true?
That is not true. I do not.
He wasn't
the contract
given,
for the school
because
resource
that's,
officer.
again, I'm going to be honest. I don't know, but that is what the Globe said, that he was given a raise. That he kept his job, not as the coach. He kept the job as the resource officer.
He is not the resource officer.
That's true. Then I personally have a problem with that.
Right, but he's not the resource officer.
And you know, that's all I have to say. My heart does go out to the whole team. My heart goes out to both sides. And I agree with the mother over here. And I agree with what this woman just said. But the fact is that, from what I understand, it had been going on for years. And everybody looked the other way. I mean, I listened to the interview on Channel 5 tonight. And the fellow states that an assistant coach walked in and saw what was going on and said, "What's going on?" And when they said, "Well, it's Gay Tuesday," the assistant coach just said, "Well, I don't want to know about it," and he shuts the light off. And you know, I read this, and my heart went out to everybody. But I just don't understand how this goes on and on. And as I say, I'm going to apologize again, but the Globe says that he was, even after this investigation was going on, he was allowed to keep his job. You know, instead of taking him away from the school instead of, having these, players, instead of other people having to look at this guy. He was allowed to keep the job. And that's what I can't fathom. And that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you, Julie. All right, Jim Morose. I figured it was only a matter of time, Jim.
Yeah, I really didn't plan on getting up tonight. My name's Jim Morose.
I think you say that every time.
Well, it's 2021. We got mass communication, and yet we still have mass confusion. I can't believe the differences of opinion and what's going on. The fake news is, they just want to make money. Social media isn't real. And parents need to parent. Teach it. The school department and the school needs to teach the kids. And let's just, if you have an issue, bring it up to the right channels. Do we all know what the right channels are? Are we supposed to go to mass media? No, you go through the proper channels. You got an issue? Go to the channels. If your child is being abused or bullied in school, then you keep coming until you get a resolution. Don't wait for a meeting. You have to take matters into your own hands at the time it happens. That's all I want to say. I mean, really.
Thank you, Jim. All right, anybody else? Because if not, okay. In the back?
I had no intention of speaking. No intention at all. No one here, probably. I don't think anyone knows me. I don't know many people here at all. My name is Gabe Lopes. I've lived in Danvers for about 5 years. Obviously, I have two beautiful, mixed race, black children, Cape Verdean, half Egyptian. One's 4, the other one's 7 years old. I really want to sympathize with the hockey mom here, the hockey players. They're young, they make mistakes, things happen. But what I think these kids really deserve is a fresh start. A few adults in this room have to take responsibility, give these kids the second chance they deserve, be honorable, and resign. This is embarrassing. It's some of the comments from some of the committee members, tone deaf, just cold. It gave me chills. And I don't have high school kids, but if you really want a reset, and hockey moms, I sympathize with you. Any athletes, any teachers, anyone here, the kids do deserve a second chance. Some of you folks specifically here, please step down and let the town heal and start over. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mark, you're smiling back there. I think all you can think of is what this is going to look like, huh? Yeah. 1 minute. And then if someone else who's already spoken wants to speak, but 1 minute.
Okay, no, that's fine. I get it. I just want to say again, as a hockey parent, as a mother, if this was happening to your child and you saw your child's friends that are older, that have graduated, 16, I repeat, 16 of these kids are not at the high school anymore. These kids are mentally suffering. These kids are on the verge of suicide. And I just want you people to realize when you post stuff and when you put things and you shame them like this, they have been shamed. They get what they did or what they wrote is wrong. But my child did not see any physical things happen to anybody. And I just wanted to make sure my child did not see that. My child did not do it. He did not witness it. But the older children who are part of it are mentally suffering, and you should appreciate that and feel for them.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, then this dispenses with public comment. I think that Well, let me go down the committee. Do any of the committee members, starting with Jeff, have any comments after hearing the public comment?
I appreciate everybody coming and talking and bringing this to light, and I agree with a lot of what was said. I need to process a lot of where we've been on this committee, what we've seen, what we've heard, and where we will go. I will make a couple of comments. First of all, and the press, of course, leaves as soon as I say this, but I actually have a lot of respect for the press. And while I understand social media has its own, I don't know the right term, ecosystem that feeds on itself, I do believe the press, by and large, tries to get to the facts. But what I think sometimes a lot of the press and others, including us, miss is asking the right questions. So a lot of the comments, a lot of the viewpoints are very valid, but are we asking the right questions in all of this? Is the Globe asking the right questions? Are the television stations that are reporting tonight going to ask the right questions, right? And so this is what I'm trying to say. I'm worried about, are we as a school committee asking the right questions to bring this forward and help us progress? Because sometimes I think we do, and sometimes I don't think we do that as well as we could. And so I challenge all of us to do that. Every television station that was here, I don't know who's still here, one or two, ask those questions, go deeper, right? Make this a larger forum, not just about our school district, other school districts, not just about these issues, but other issues, not just about these specific facts, these kids, these teachers, these issues. How does this happen? What is the process? What is the process that a school committee has to go through to do this, right? We have specific processes and procedures that we are bound by as elected officials to go through. Some of those might seem like, why would we do this? But they are listed and printed as to what we go through to have to look at those. And so dig deeper on that and challenge not just us, but challenge others who are in positions of leadership to think through this and say, how is this going to happen? Is this a Danvers issue? Is this other school committee issues? How have other school committees, how have other organizations dealt with similar actions that have had to do the same things that we have? And put a spotlight on it. I am fine for a spotlight. I am fine for us to be challenged on our processes that we went through for this. Now, there's some questions about privacy, questions about what is happening in different areas. Those can be debated. Well, let's debate them, bring them out. And I hope the organizations that are challenged with talking about this in the public bring these questions out. And that's my comment on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And I would agree. There's something all of us should and really must take away from not only the comments tonight, but this whole event as we look back on it. And I think you're absolutely right in calling us to challenge ourselves. Robin.
I think I pretty much said everything I wanted to say, other than, we have a lot of things in place with equity and inclusion. I want to make sure that we are actually implementing them with fidelity and are making sure and have clear, not just qualitative, but also quantitative data to show that this is working, and not just checking off boxes. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Alice.
Nothing further to add from my original statement, but I do want to just say that I'm hopeful I'm hopeful for my 2 young kids who will hopefully continue to rise through the public school system. I appreciate all the families and community members coming out and speaking and sharing their stories. And we have received many other emails, so there are families that are continuing to share their stories and their concerns that many of you haven't seen, so I just want everyone to be aware of that as well. But thanks to everyone who has spoken tonight.
Thank you, Alice. Arthur?
Yeah, no, nothing. I mean, I had my say, and I appreciate everybody that came and spoke. Even if we maybe not agree on everything, but I do listen, and I appreciate, again, always when people come and talk to us. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Arthur. I want to thank everybody who came and spoke to us, and that's even those who, I don't necessarily agree with. I respect everyone's passion. I respect how people want to be heard and how I think people speak because they care. And I could hear a lot of emotion on, regardless of what you chose to say, I know where your hearts are, and I appreciate you coming out. Mr. Lopes, I'm probably not going to resign, I'm sorry. But I wanted to talk to you. First of all, welcome to town. You said you've been here 5 years?
5 years.
Okay. We're glad you're here. I have been here almost 60 years, give or take. Went to the Thorpe School, and then my own daughters went to the Thorpe School. And now I have one grandchild who's just started the Thorpe School in kindergarten, and 2 who will be following him in a couple of years. The difference is that my grandchildren are half Haitian, and they have made their home here in Danvers like I did, like my parents did, like I did, and now my daughter has. And maybe of all the things that were said tonight is this idea, to me anyway, is the idea that, we're cold or that we don't care. I assure you that I want a great educational experience for all our students of every color, or of every race, of every sexual orientation, of every preference, of every gender identity. And I want us to be better as a school system and a community at welcoming all people, treating all people with respect, and educating all students. I've been on the school committee 20 years, a little more than 20 years. I am still here because I have that passion that you talk about. So I want you to know, especially, and to everybody else, that I am committed to the same things that I think all of us as parents are, even though I'm a grandparent. I want these beautiful grandchildren who I love dearly, and all of the children in this community to have the best experience they can. And to the extent that that requires self-reflection on my part, reflection on us as a school committee, reflection on the administration, we all need to be looking every day at what we can do better, and I am no exception to that. So I hope that all I ask is that don't think that I don't care. That's all I ask.
Can I respond?
Sure.
Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate you sharing that you have Haitians in your family. That's fantastic. I'm not here to question the intention or the desire. I see a major lack in qualification. You guys are way out over your skis. I don't think you're all equipped to handle what's happening.
No, I appreciate your comments. As I say, I appreciate your comments.
It doesn't take away from the time you've lived in the town. There's a qualification, there's an awareness, and there's some, emotional intelligence that I think is really missing in this room.
I accept.
Even a great chef can ruin an omelet. No one is immune from making massive mistakes, but There's a difference between trying to make a good omelet and creating a welcoming and a warm community and addressing a community in a way that isn't cold, condescending, or tone deaf.
Now, I will accept the point even if I disagree with it. So thank you. Thank you. Yep. Beyond that, I think what I said in the beginning of the meeting in terms of my thoughts about this are pretty clear. And again, self-reflection will be the word of the day. Thank you. So now we're going to move on to the COVID statistics and next steps. Actually, strike that. You know what? We'll take a. I'm sorry. What?
Are you guys not going to vote on Robin's motion, or tell us?
All right. Robin's motion was out of order. We cannot talk about personnel issues in this context, and there are rights that Lisa has to notice of this kind of request and motion, and so we will be having an executive session in the very near future to address Robin's concerns. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. I thought I made it clear when I said it was out of order, but I apologize. When we came back, I could have said something.
And Mr. Crane, are we not sharing the date with the executive session?
I'm sorry, say that
Are we not sharing the date of the executive session?
I'm sorry, we did. We set it for
Okay.
Monday.
Monday at 7 p.m.
Yep.
No, executive
Why
sessions
is
are
it
not
executive
public.
session? Okay. So with that, do we want to take a 5-minute break before we talk about COVID?
Yeah.
I see some nodding heads. All right. Thank with our COVID statistics and next steps.
So as we do begin each of our meetings, just reminding our community about our health and safety measures as we continue to navigate through COVID, hand washing, mask and face coverings, which are required at this point, and staying home when sick. As we go through our monthly data, we'll start and kind of go week by week. And Mary, if we can actually go to the next slide. We already went over that one at the last meeting. So it's only been 3 weeks since our last meeting with the later meeting in October. So we have seen case counts come down some over the past 3 weeks. So you'll see as of Friday, October 22nd, there was 38 cases, 7 of them in the school setting. Overall, the vaccination percentage was 74%. Our positivity rate was 3.64. 21% of the cases were under the age of 18. And we had 15 students in the test and stay program. If we go to the next slide, you'll see just a 1 case increase. So we had 39 cases the week of 10/29, with 5 cases in the schools, a 75% vaccination rate, so a slight increase. The positivity rate came down to 3.27, with 26% of the cases in children under the age of 18, and 21 students in the test and stay program. And then if we go to the week of 11/5, we had 36 total cases, 6 in the schools, 75% vaccination again, a 2.61 positivity rate, 28% of the cases under the age of 18, and 7 students in the test and stay program. So happy that those numbers had come down from case counts in the higher 50s into the 30s. We're cautiously optimistic that those numbers will stay down. The report from the state today showed case numbers up in comparison to last Monday. So we'll stay tuned about how those cases continue to go. If we look at our vaccination rates, again, so as we looked at our last meeting, we were at 56% of students aged 12 to 15 who were vaccinated, and 66% of students age 16 to 19, with Massachusetts at 70% for both of those brackets. As we go to our next slide, our vaccination rates with children have stayed the same, so we remain at 56 and 66% in those age brackets, and then we will start to track the 5 through 11-year-olds depending on data availability from the state. So we need to see when they start to share that information with us and what that looks like. And then as we did our last meeting, we're going to continue to share what our local data collection is around vaccination rates. So again, when a individual school reaches the 80% threshold of the overall population in the school, including students and staff, they become eligible for a local choice to opt out of the mask mandate. So you'll see that we did have an increase in more individuals have shared their vaccination cards. So we're thankful for that. And we continue to encourage families to share. But at the high school, our total vaccination percentage went from 22 to 34. Just based on the other data, we know it's probably somewhere in the 50 to 60% range. So we still encourage families to share that information with us so that we can make informed decisions. If we go to the middle school, the same data, again, a large increase from about 15% to about 32%. So again, thankful that families are sharing that information. And then if we go to our district-wide vaccination rates for staff, a slight increase. Again, we're just below the 70% mark. We do anecdotally believe that's slightly higher, but that's the number of people that have chosen to share at this point. So a little bit shorter this month sharing that. We do not have our normal makeup of people here with us, as there's no real decisions to be made around masking until we get to that 80% threshold, or until January 15th when the commissioner reevaluates his mask mandate that's currently in place, and we'll continue to look at that latest information and adjust as we go.
All right, do we have questions for Keith on this item?
My question is just, other North Shore communities, have they reported, I think I know the answer, but I'll ask this question anyway. Have they reported higher vaccination rates among students and entire schools? I feel like some schools have said they're getting close, and so they have purposeful drives of constant drumbeats of communication to families saying, currently it's 70%, you know, folks, if all we need is 10% more to let us know how we're doing. Like, I have a sense that's what's happening. Do we know for sure how many have hit 80, which are close? Anything like that?
just kind of an anecdotal sense, like you said, I know that Hopkinton, I believe, was one community that has reached 80. I've not heard of any communities on the North Shore that have hit that 80% mark. There are some that are closer than we are, and they are doing, more of a push to see if they can get there. I'll say that the state vaccination data that we collected, if we go back, I think 3 slides, Mary, this slide really informs where we are as a community. So you see that it's at the bottom right-hand corner there is at 56 and 66%. So that shows us that we have a ways to go to really hit that 80% threshold. So if we do get closer to the 80%, then I would say we'd probably have an increased marketing campaign around collecting that local data. But until families have to make that, personal decision about whether their families are going to get vaccinated or not, we're just going to kind of continue our reminder each month, reminder in the school newsletters to send in the information. But at this point, continue that strategy.
And putting faculty at, say, 100% versus 65% would lower the requirement that we would need for students as well.
Right, and obviously, I mean, students make up a larger majority than the faculty. So, for example, at the high school, it's about 900 students and 100 faculty members. So until the children or the young adult vaccination rates increase, we're still going to need to see an increase there to make up that difference.
So it's a 10-to-1 ratio. So even if we got 30% more of faculty, that's only 3%. We would get of the students that we would need. So we would need some statistically significant, which 3% is probably within the range of error anyway. So we need about 20 to 30% more. Okay, thank you.
Robin.
No questions.
Oh,
No questions.
Mr. Scarn.
All set.
Okay. There was one person, Mr. Smith, who came specifically to talk about the COVID piece. He signed up to speak, and he just wanted to speak about the COVID piece. So, public comment on the COVID piece.
Without the cameras present.
So I do appreciate the information that you just reviewed and your candor. It is a marketing campaign. There's really no talk about efficacy or safety. And my concern, and I hope I can talk to you about the passion, seems like the passion might have left the room. Now we're talking about injecting people with an investigational new drug. It's a new technology. There's no long-term study on safety. And the efficacy is starting to show that it wanes after 2 months, 3 months, 5 months. There's a lot of issues. So I'll talk briefly because I know I don't have a lot of time, but I hope some of the passion to take care of the kids hasn't left the room yet. This is a study out of Harvard. It says that increases in COVID-19 are unrelated to levels of vaccination across 68 countries and 2,947 counties in the United States. This is Harvard. That's efficacy. If I had more time, I'd talk more about that, but I think safety is more important. So back in October of 2020, the FDA and the CDC, the two bigwigs in our country, both had these preliminary list of vaccine adverse events, okay? Including COVID-19 disease. This is the CDC's. This was put out by Dr. Tom Shimbakuru. I'm sure you've heard his name in your marketing campaigns. COVID-19 disease, death, Guillain-Barré syndrome, acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, transverse myelitis, skipping down. They knew about autoimmune disease, anaphylaxis, acute myocardial infarction, myocarditis, pericarditis, thrombocytopenia, disseminated intravascular coagulation, which is blood clotting. So this is the CDC. Here's the FDA. It was put up by Dr. Steve Anderson, PhD, from the Center of Biological Evaluation and Research, which is the FDA arm that put these vaccine products out. And make no mistake, these are investigational new drugs. They are not the typical vaccine. These are gene therapy drugs. Moderna, Pfizer, FDA, CDC, all classify this as a gene therapy, okay? Not your typical antigen-based vaccine. So we're dealing with a whole new ballgame of vaccine technology. You can call it a vaccine, that's fine, but it's not your typical understood vaccine. So this was October of 2020. This was the FDA and the CDC. They knew about myocarditis and thrombosis. As we progressed with the vaccination, we started to see problems with myocarditis. And just as a little visual, I had these made up. So this is myocarditis through October 29th of 2021. And you can see it's by age. You probably can't see it because it's kind of small. So these are the reports of myocarditis, and here's age, 12 years old all the way up to 65 years of age. So you see the younger age group has a higher incidence of myocarditis. And as a baseline, this is from Open VIIRS. This is the CDC FDA website. I didn't make this myself. You can go online and find this yourself. They had as a composite comparison the flu vaccine. And it's very small. You probably have a hard time seeing it. The blue dots down there, okay? It's a very small incidence of myocarditis, but it's a full-blown problem with the younger age group. That's myocarditis. So they realized that. Here's June 2021. Now keep in mind, in October of 2020, CDC and FDA knew myocarditis was a problem with the gene therapy vaccine. Here's June 21st, 2021. Oh, sorry, that's the thrombosis. I'll do that one too. So they knew that it was causing blood clots and coagulation. So they just approved a first oral blood thinner medication for children. So if you're going to cause blood coagulation and thrombosis in children, you better have a way to treat it. So they just approved in June 2021 a way to treat a blood thinner for children. As far as the myocarditis goes, where's the press briefing on that? All right, so anyway, they did come out with a press briefing. If I can't find it, they updated the fact sheet. I don't know if any of you have received the fact sheet. If you got your vaccination, you're required by law, the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. Any medication that's issued under an emergency use authorization has to give you a fact sheet. So the fact sheet was updated in August. This is the August copy, but it was June when they made the determination that myocarditis was a problem, and they updated it. But what they had down here before myocarditis was allergic reactions, injection site pain, tenderness, headache, difficulty breathing, bad rash, dizziness, weakness. They didn't have heart attacks, autoimmune disease, stroke, narcolepsy. They didn't have those on there, so they weren't really telling people.
So, Mark, if I can just stop you for a sec.
I got one more point to finish.
If you wish, yeah.
Thank you. The last thing on the children, so they now have an emergency use authorization for children 5 to 11. They know that this product causes heart damage, okay? So the FDA has approved, this is October 26th, 2021, the FDA has approved to provide a vaccine with an improved stability platform. The Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine for use in children 5 to 11 years of age uses tromethamine buffer instead of the phosphate buffered saline. So they're changing the formulation. This is an FDA briefing that is letting people know that they are changing the formulation. What is tromethamine? I had no idea. I had to look it up. Yeah, you probably never heard of it, right? What it's used for is to reduce the acid level in the blood. What produces acid in the blood? Heart damage. So they've come out with a blood thinner for children because they know it causes blood clots, and they're changing the formulation to have a product in the vaccine that will dissipate the acid level in the blood if heart damage is caused. Now here's my last point. Myocarditis is not mild, okay? So cardiologists will tell you that there is no such thing as a mild case of myocarditis. You hear it in the news all the time. They can be treated with some steroids. They get put on bed rest. So American Heart Association, the NIH, all these people, they've looked at myocarditis for the past 30 years, and they've found that on average, 20% of the people who get myocarditis will be dead within a year, and less than 50% of the people will live past 5 years. Myocarditis is heart damage. Heart damage does not go away. And even if you take myocarditis out of the scheme and you have autoimmune diseases, this is what it looks like. This is the mortality reports. This is the COVID VIIRS mortality reports from 1990 all the way to present. So if you look at this, you see there's pretty much a constant stream of red, right? That's about 150 to 200 vaccine adverse events that lead to death every year from 1990 to present.
Okay, Mark.
You get to 2020, and you see a spike.
Are you using this just as an opportunity to share with the town your viewpoints on vaccination?
18,078 deaths recorded by VAERS.
I'm happy to.
It's a problem.
We are the Danvers School Committee.
Yes. So I'm telling Danvers School Committee, because the emergency use authorization is going to be coming for 5 to 11-year-olds. You're pushing this marketing campaign for high school, like middle school and high school students. You have a responsibility to the children, just like we talked about in the last session, right? That passion you had in the last session about protecting children. If you are aware that there is a safety risk, okay, then you need to do your due diligence and look into it and confirm. Are my facts right? Is there a myocarditis issue? Do children have a concern that we need to protect them? And if you look into it and you find out that there is a concern, then you need to investigate that. That's called responsibility.
We are reporting.
Thank you.
We are reporting to the town our COVID rates and our vaccination rates, because the vaccination rates, like it or not, are relevant to what the state might do in terms of masking. So we're providing information. I don't know why you call it a marketing campaign, but that's fine.
He called it a marketing campaign. It was very
Just
candid.
for clarity, I'd like to say it was a marketing campaign around collecting students' vaccination status, and that I did say that it was a personal family choice around what they choose to do for vaccination.
I mean, I get your points. I mean, I haven't approved a vaccine in 20 years.
What you're doing is pushing. And the comments were about pushing. How do we induce people? How do we induce people to get this? You're not even talking about the safety, right? You know how long they tried these things in clinical trials, which are still ongoing, by the way. Pfizer and Moderna clinical trials don't end until 2023, right? They tested them for 2 months. 2 months. 2 months.
Yeah, Mark, I think to some extent you're beating the drum in the wrong band here.
I'm not. I live here.
I understand
My kids go to school here. So if you're going to try and mandate, if you're going to try and mandate this product, that's
when did we didn't talk, we have not talked about mandating anything.
No, I know. And that's why I'm here to educate you. I'm trying to educate
when that
you.
happens, come before us and again, I'm not going to comment on the right or wrongness of the information. I don't know. But what I am telling you is that a lot of the issues you're raising would be well presented to a level above us.
They are being presented
that's
as a level above you, but they need
I think you and I talked, and I'm hopeful that the state legislators will be here in December and come back then and talk to them about your concerns that the state will mandate something.
I appreciate that, but that sounds a lot like kicking the can down the road. This is a local community. Okay, we have local responsibility to the families, to the children who walk in these local schools. So if I'm telling you that there's a potential safety risk for children, you can't just say, bring it to the State House.
No, what I'm saying...
You can't just say, come back next meeting.
We're not, as Keith said, we're not trying to say, you must get vaccinated. I may think it's a great idea, but I'm not telling Keith's children or, anyone that they ought to get vaccinated. I happen to think personally, I think it's a good idea. But, we're not here trying to mandate vaccinations for anybody. It's not before us today. It might never be, or someday it might be. And happy to look at all the information, and I continue to look at information that comes out. You probably recognize that your position isn't shared by a lot of people, and it is shared by a fair amount of people. So all I'm saying is that tonight, in November of 2021, we're not looking at a vaccine mandate. And all we're trying to do is give people information as to what's happening in the town and in the schools. And the numbers, like it or not, are relevant to the masking decision that the state is likely to make in January. I appreciate your passion for the subject. And again, come back when it'll be helpful for the state legislators to hear this too.
So I will come back. I will come back to as many school committee meetings as I have to.
Well,
but
that's
your answer, albeit respectful, okay, does not address anything that I just said. Okay, so take it or leave it. I'm putting it out there for your information. If we can listen to other people, and then we can learn ourselves, like look into information yourselves, try and find out. You can go to openveers.com. You can go to the FDA website. You can go to the CDC website. You can put in some DuckDuckGo searches. You can find the journal articles for myocarditis. You can do some research on these products yourself instead of just taking what's handed to you. Do some research yourself and find out some answers.
Mark, I appreciate your passion for the subject. I appreciate the work that you do, and how you feel about it. But again, we're not going to turn this right now into a platform for a debate about vaccines.
This wasn't a debate.
No.
I appreciate the extra time. I went over 3 minutes. But
No, I hadn't noticed really.
What I wanted to do was just let you all know. You seem like good people. That was a very difficult session that we just sat through. I want you all to know that our jobs are not done. We
Fair
have to
enough.
make sure we keep our eye on the ball, because if there's dangers to our children that are lurking in a locker room or in a pharmaceutical product, we have to do our due diligence to take care of them.
Fair enough.
And make sure we know exactly what we're doing.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions from the committee for Keith on this one? No? Okay. We should move on to the next section, number 5. I know Paul is Mr. Pollock is still here waiting patiently to get there. So let's start with student services and Cpac. Mrs. O'Neill and our co-chairs.
Hello, how are you all? So the Cpac co-chairs, unfortunately, weren't feeling well, so they left it up to me to incorporate their information in the couple slides that I presented to you.
Sure.
So, you know, as all of you know, I'm new to Danvers. This is my first school year here. I am still so excited to be here. I've learned about lots of great things so far, and I've met so many great people. If you want to just do the next. I just wanted to put some talking points up. You know, some of the strategies, certainly there's no entry plan at this point yet, and the goals for my tenure here has not been solidified, but some of the strategies that I've employed to get to know Danvers, our students, our families, I just wanted to list some of the work that I've spent my time doing. So I'm happy to report that, you know, I've visited all of the schools. I've done many classroom walkthroughs. I've been meeting with principals. I've had great discussions with the curriculum directors. I'm working closely with the school psychologists as the team chairs to really streamline and make our processes efficient. I am attending special education staff meetings, and hopefully by the end of November, I will have hit all buildings and all levels of the different staffing positions. I am, oh my gosh, I couldn't read that for a second, but you know, of scheduling related service provider meetings, had the opportunity to do some work with the social workers, spent some time with them during the PD early release the other day, and really talking with families about their students, talking with teachers about their students, and how I can contribute to the success for our students in Danvers Public Schools. So I'm really excited to be here. The work has been challenging so far, but really exciting. So I just wanted to give you a snapshot that I'm spending my days wisely and my long days, and that I'm happy, you know, each day to come to work and learn more about this great district. So then the next slide just talks a little bit about Cpac. So for Cpac, we have had 2 events. We had a welcome Zoom. We also had a resource fair on the 21st of October, and that was very well attended. The Cpac co-chairs were really excited. We held that at the middle school. There were about 10 or 12 vendors, lots of great options for parents. Everybody who I spoke to as they were coming in were really excited, which was great. I would love to be able to read that to you, but I can't see it from here. The mission statement that they put together for the slide that was developed together collaboratively in the September meeting. And so they do want that to be publicized. They want really the co-chairs are very excited to get Cpac out there as a support source for parents and families with children with special needs.
Do you want me to read that for you if they want to get it out there?
If you wanted to, that would be great.
Danvers Cpac is a group of volunteer parents who are dedicated to the support and education of caregivers of children with unique needs. Our presence serves to provide information and engagement with the community on all matters surrounding special education. We strive to foster open communication between the school district and families. We believe in empowering each other to advocate for the needs of our children so they may receive respect, acceptance, and the best education.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
So the next event coming up will be Basic Rights with the Federation for Children, and that date is still to be determined. But Cpac really wants everybody to know that if parents or families have concerns, please reach out. Their email address is on that slide, and they have a Facebook page that people could follow, and they would love that. So they're a really great group of people. We've worked collaboratively so far, and I'm looking forward to this year really developing some nice presentations so that families can get support and feel like there is a special education community out there.
Great. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank
Other
you.
questions?
All set. Thank you, Lynn.
Alice.
All set. Thank you.
Robin?
Yeah, no, welcome. I know we've been able to have a few meetings together, and I have heard really positive feedback, and I'm excited for the work you're going to be doing. So thank you.
And Jeff?
Yeah, no questions, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Lynn. It is obvious that you've spent a lot of time doing what you need to do to get to know this district, and so we look forward to hearing from you often. Thank you. DHS Communications for 9th grade transition, Mr. Federico.
So we just wanted to quickly go through sort of our approach to transitioning the 8th graders up to the high school. So we've sort of gone with the theme of finding your success at DHS to emphasize sort of the many different pathways for success at our school. So if you go to the first slide, it's just a timeline of we're really approaching this process differently. I have the unique gift of hindsight on this one since I was on the other end of this process for a long time. So we're going to go visit with, we began with an outreach letter to all 8th grade families that went out, I guess it was last week. We'll visit with the 8th graders in early December, have an assembly. We'll meet with each team and have DHS students and staff present about our school. We're going to schedule some coffee talks with Mr. DeMoro and myself so that 8th grade families have the chance in like a smaller venue to ask us questions that are more maybe personal to their child or more personal that they wouldn't ask in a larger venue. So we'll be sending out times and sign up for that soon. Throughout December and January, the course selection process will begin. So 8th graders will begin to consider what courses they want to take, both electives and core subjects. We'll have our annual grade 8 meeting in January. And then January through March, we're going to also offer some tours of the building. We feel it's time to bring families back into the high school. When this building first came online, I think it was really showcased by the district, and I'd put it up against any school in the state. I feel from a physical plant situation, we're a top-notch school in that way. And we want to make sure we showcase that to any new families. They could be families of elementary school kids, but just to let them know what's at that last step. June, we'll do a follow-up visit with the middle school, and then we'll have orientation in August for our 9th graders that are coming. So that's the process. On the next slide, just kind of, we spoke about this earlier, but we are really trying to support a positive culture and community. That photo is our entire student body organized in the word kind. It was part of our Kindness Week. Special shout out to Mr. Daniels, our band teacher who organized that. That was no small feat. I was a little nervous, but it went really well. So we're really, again, I think as we spoke earlier, that's a core part of our work. And then just lastly, we want to make sure that there's still a focus on the entire high school experience that we offer. So we feel like we have a range of access points for all learners in terms of the kind of courses that we have. The number of electives that we offer here is amazing. There's so many diverse courses that kids can tap into. Over 22 extracurricular activities, 25 athletic teams. Our band, chorus, visual arts, and performing arts programs are very strong, and we're very proud of them. Our early college partnership with North Shore, we're really entering into this work now. We're excited that kids can earn college credit while they're taking high school courses as well, or taking college courses and earning both high school and college credit. I reversed that. Our Project Lead the Way program is, a unique aspect to our school that we're happy with. Domestic and international travel, as it works and as it's safe, those are opportunities that kids can access here that I think are really unique. And again, emphasizing the facility. So I think a lot for us to also remember to talk about as we work with our 8th grade families. And we hope that 8th grade families will give us strong consideration. We want to have them here. So that's just a little bit of the overview of what we're going to be focusing on this year.
Thank you, Adam. Are there questions for Adam?
Just a thought for Mr. Federico and Mr. DeMauro. There are amazing elective courses that I'm not going to lie, I didn't really realize till later. And I'm wondering if when we get to before the kids select their courses, if we thought about is there a way we can capture them with videos or something or maybe you've thought about that before? Because I don't think people realize in the community how many hands-on types of learning and traditional core classes that we really do have to offer, because it's much more than, the requirements for graduation.
So
really talk it up.
So I'd say we're actually going to work on sort of a 9th grade program of studies that will sort of highlight that particular aspect of what we can offer, like some of our shop and engineering classes. And we're also, from a video standpoint, we have our TV production class.
Get them into
that's
video.
Working on, I gave them some homework and they're going to work on sort of a multimedia presentation that we'll be able to share. So
awesome.
I agree, though. We have to highlight, one of the things I feel like we've learned is we want to really market the strengths of the school as we work on other areas.
And we didn't have half as many of these electives when I went here. So I'm oh my God, I got to take in biotechnology. What? And I don't even think a lot of kids would even know what that meant. So
that's a great point. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Anybody else?
The only thing I would comment, and I think you're in a unique position, Adam, to talk about this, which is if a student wants to come to the high school, it's all about the experience I would submit that they've had to date in the school system, unless they're coming from somewhere else, right? So if you had a great experience in the elementary school, if you had a great experience in the middle school, and it should be that a big part of that is coming, and I think a lot of kids do. But I think what happens is, I think Robin's right. Is I think they kind of miss out, and they say, okay, it was great, but it was tough. We've talked about it all the time. Middle school is super tough for a lot of kids, emotional, social learning. And they have this vision of other, schools or programs which are super close in town. It's different, it's exciting, whatever it is. I don't know the reason. The point I'm trying to say is I would like to have a gauge as to what students really feel the experience is like coming up through the schools. And then I think we can do a better job of saying how the experience at Danvers High School will be complementary and help them grow and part of the community, right? So that's the only part I've seen kind of over the few years has been difficult for me to assess what the student experience is from the data, right? I think, we look at so many numbers on statistics and graduation rates and MCAS scores. Okay, that's great. But is there some kind of measurement that we can say for students, broken down by different, experiences that students have, that says, yeah, this group of students loves it and they're going to go to DHS no matter what. This group of students, is for whatever reason been struggling, maybe not getting the support that they need or felt that they needed, and therefore feel they're going to get some other level of support somewhere else, right? If we just have that out there, then I think we can say, okay, these courses or these experiences you're going to have are going to help that. So that's the only thing I would say to add to some of this to provide some of the feedback I think would be good.
I think we're hoping with some of the smaller group opportunities to talk with families that maybe that'll be one of the themes that we can learn about. So if you're an 8th grade family weighing your options, that if we can have that interaction, hopefully we can convince you we're the place to come to. But if not, maybe at least we can learn what pushed you in a different direction too. And that would be helpful for us. So I think that we're hopeful that that will give us, it won't be quantitative necessarily, but it will give us at least a starting point to then maybe figure that out. So I hope those smaller venues will maybe give us an insight into where people are with that process.
And see if parents and students who go to the tech or the prep or wherever they're going, Penguin Hall or whatever, are and again, statistically, I don't know if it's that big. We've talked about before, look, is it really that big? Is it not that big? Is it because they're local? I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. But even if we have some feedback from those students who have attended, and they're willing, right? Because I bet a lot of them would be willing to talk and say, yeah, I did 4 years at the tech and it was really great, but you know what I miss? I miss X, Y, and Z from Danvers. Like their band is not nearly as good, right? Their whatever is, I missed out on the the literature and theory of something. Like if they have that and can give us that feedback, I think it's good as well. So I don't know how we do that. I don't know if we have a right to go and talk to them, but we could put it out there for folks who will tell us the truth. Okay, that's all. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? No?
Yeah, I mean,
yes.
I think it's forward progress, because I think last month we had talked about perhaps the perception of the high school and when you're making that transition from 8th grade to the high school and where the kids want to go. So I do think that this is forward progress in the right direction in terms of getting kids and families excited about what Danvers has to offer. So I'm glad you put this process together, and I think it's something that we haven't seen. So I think hopefully we will see results from that. But I do agree that we should try to find a way to get feedback on current students, future students. What do future students perceive the high school to be? It'll be important to keep track of that as well.
Thank you, Alice. Yeah, I think personally the need to, well, there's two things. One, to show students that they can get a great education and have a great experience at the high school. And I think laying out the positives and the things that we are doing and the promise of what they can have by coming to Danvers High School is important. And then all the work that we're doing around equity and inclusion and other things is going to help us to provide that great experience, because it's one thing to promise, it's another thing to deliver, and that's certainly going to be part of what we need to do. So thank you, Adam. We appreciate the information. Anything to add? Anybody else? Lisa or Keith? No? Okay. All right. Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. So next item is the strategic plan, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you. This evening we have members of our administrative team that will bring us through each level of what we are currently working on and plans for the remainder of this school year. So again, we look at engaged students with our diversity, equity, inclusion, coherent curriculum and instruction, and our safe and supportive learning environments. 4 of the major areas: provide culturally responsive learning opportunities, build a sense of belonging, establish our school environments where all are felt valued, heard, and supported, and implement our professional development. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary.
Great. So before I turn it over to our curriculum team to highlight what's happening at each of the levels, I thought I would just highlight a few documents that really inform our work. I think we've done talking over some of the past meetings on our diversity, equity, and inclusion work, but I'll just highlight some of the documents we use. So the Department of Ed has a webpage around culturally responsive and sustaining schools and classrooms, and it really helps you help guide districts in the work that we're doing for students. And here they provide a continuum from being culturally proficient to being culturally responsive, and then to being, our ultimate goal is to be culturally sustaining schools and classrooms. So we realize this is a continuum. It's not a strict straight line curriculum, and that we will, depending on our work with certain groups and in certain areas, we could be culturally sustaining, but in other areas we could just be culturally proficient. So it's a way of keeping an eye on the work we're doing and kind of self-assessing where we're at in doing this work. We also looked at the DESE's acceleration roadmap, and the first goal is to foster a sense of belonging. And I think that as we began our work with diversity, equity, and inclusion, back at the 2020 school year, 2020, 2021, I think we really felt like that was an important part of our work to build that foundation with that. So in this description that they provide for fostering a sense of belonging, they say students' sense of belonging is critical and often undervalued, a condition for academic success. Students who feel a sense of belonging feel socially connected, supported, and respected. They trust their teachers and their peers, and they feel a sense of fit at school. We feel like that we really move forward with this as in January of 2021, when we began our study group striving to become anti-racist educators. And that was a group of 76 teachers, pre-K to 12, participating in it. And it really started our work on the diversity, equity, inclusion, and then really relationship building. From there, during the June optional professional development, and you'll hear some of the curriculum directors referring to some of the books we read. We had a book study group to start to say, this is key as we move from our COVID learning year into a new school year where we were coming back full in person. We really needed to work on building relationships between teachers and students and among students. So from there, we went on and built, worked or integrated in relationship building and identity work throughout our professional learning to start the school year. And work continues. We have 3 different study groups working in each of these areas, and the curriculum directors will be coming forward to talk to you about that. So this sense of belonging, we felt like this quote really captured that sense, that inclusivity in the context of teaching and learning does not simply mean that you are allowed to be present here. To be included means that we have changed ourselves and our practices to make here a place where you can thrive. So we really feel like that is part of the work that we are doing as educators. We also look at the curriculum frameworks as guidance in the area of having a diversity, equity, and inclusion inside our teaching and learning phases. So the ELA curriculum framework has this has many principles that are listed here on this slide that help guide us in that work, as well as the history and social studies curriculum framework. So given the late hour, I'm not going to go through each of the slides, but you have them here to refer to. So before I turn this over to the team that all get up and do their each level presentation, we'll start with Danvers High and move our way through. I hope that you see the coherence that is happening pre-K to 12 and that how strongly our team has been working together to put this work together. So I'll call you up. Peter will be started for Danvers High School.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm excited and proud to summarize some of the work that's going on at Danvers High School around this work. So our goal included in our school improvement plan that directly aligns with district priorities and the DESC acceleration roadmap is that Danvers High School will establish a school environment in which all stakeholders feel valued, heard, and supported with a variety of venues to engage in work to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I do also just want to say the steps that we have undertaken thus far have focused around setting the stage for this work. So really ensuring that we have the structures, the resources, the tools in place to be able to productively move forward. We recognize that in order to do this as a community, we need to do so with a collective effort with all stakeholders involved. And so we really have been trying to be thoughtful and purposeful with our rollout of all of this as we move forward with involving staff, families, and students. I wanted to begin by summarizing some of the professional learning that's taken place and some of the anchor texts we've used to support and inform our work with staff. During our June PD last year, which Mary referenced, we ran book studies over the two days in order to gain valuable contexts around both culturally responsive teaching and fostering positive student relationships. So 2 options that the Danvers High community had the option included engaging with culturally responsive teaching in the brain by Zaretta Hammond, as well as No More Teaching Without Positive Relationships by Howard, Milner, McCall, and Howard. And so I've included a quote that exemplifies the importance of the work teachers engaged in over this PD, which is, "Significant learning really cannot happen without a strong, positive relationship between the teacher and student. Knowledge has to be communal, an experience, and relatable and transferable to people. When we do not build deep relationships with students, we decrease the effectiveness of our academic teaching." Through this work, we were able to explore the research first behind how honoring students' individual identities and fostering those connections is critical to academic success, and how the academic effects of positive student-teacher relationships include adjusting better to school, improving social skills and development, succeeding academically, and showing resilience. Also, students are less likely to avoid school. We've seen this specifically in some of our specialized programs, including the Therapeutic Learning Center, the DRIVE program, where students are able to build those strong relationships with staff. And our hope is to continue to roll this out with the rest of the school for students to make those connections with their teachers. I also, with these other texts, wanted to point out a couple of other opportunities that teachers have had to participate in. As Mary mentioned, you may hear some of these texts referenced again this evening from Ellen and Julie. Since when it's possible, we've tried to maintain a cohesive, vertically aligned approach in preparing both our school-based and district-wide professional development so that it is cohesive and consistent amongst all levels, depending on the developmental appropriateness of what we're doing. So during the 2021 school year, a subset of our Danvers High teachers had the opportunity to participate in the Striving to be an Anti-Racist Educator study group, which we use Being the Change as our anchor text. From that study group, the working group was able to develop a specific goal around auditing our program of studies, ensuring that we're implementing equitable practices around the school in terms of course offerings and access. And similar to our discussion, which we just talked about, I think we're really looking at what are our course offerings we have, what are the different pathways for different students, and how do we make sure that we're advertising that so that all students know that they can have a successful path at Danvers High. Additionally, during August professional development to start the year, about a third of our staff were able to participate in PD Exploring the Civically Engaged Classroom. And through this work, teachers were able to gain important resources and skills around affirming and exploring student identity, explicitly teaching important skills around implicit bias, building background knowledge through a variety of sources, and having a critical eye when consuming media. And we're continuing that work with a subset of our teachers through a study group. So now that I've discussed some of the professional learning opportunities, I want to shift what it looks like for our students. Adam already talked briefly earlier about our community block, but I did really just want to emphasize that this is really an important foundational structure that we implemented to continue a lot of this throughout this year. Prior to COVID, advisory only met once a month for 35 minutes. And it really, the momentum from that structure really stalled due to the lack of consistency in seeing the students and really being able to build that rapport and relationships. So I want to take a moment to thank our advisory committee for spearheading this work during the last half of this past year. So Mr. Alex Grover, Mr. Christian Malkaric, Mr. William Black, Ms. Cindy Noftel. This was an incredibly collaborative process. I can't emphasize that enough, including stakeholders at every level. And at the end of the day, there were over 30 collaborators for review and feedback, including teachers, administration, students, all across the board. So it was definitely a collective effort. And what I have there is just the 4 goals, which I think just are all aligned to this equity inclusion work: relationship building, student leadership development, inclusion, acceptance, and understanding, and citizenship. And right now, with this structure in place, our hope is to continue to think about ways that we're going to move this work forward. But as we said, this is really just the tip of the iceberg and our hopes for what we can do during this time. I wanted to finish by talking more specifically about some of our courses at Danvers High School. The texts shown on this slide are only a very small subset of texts available to students at the DHS library. Some of these are texts that students have available in classroom to read as independent choice reads. Our library does an excellent job in curating and maintaining texts that offer a diverse array of perspectives for students to both see themselves represented and to learn more about others that are not similar to themselves. Additionally, I've been working with our ELA department, who consistently are mindful about auditing what students are reading, what important texts can be brought into classes for students to be able to read. And the ELA 9 team is currently exploring a variety of texts to adopt as a full class read as we continue to be mindful of representation and historically marginalized voices in our classrooms. One of our other upper level ELA courses is Project Citizen. The course has a combined English and civics focus with an emphasis on how local government works to serve citizens, and encourages students to explore how thinking, rhetoric, and policy on current issues matter to them. So students first build an understanding of diverse perspectives and identity, who the public policy decision makers are and how they craft policy. And then as the year goes on, they identify a local policy and do research on a topic and develop a persuasive proposal and action plan to present by the end of the year. So our English teacher who teaches the course, Mr. White, was able to share that slide as an example from class, and also some examples from class about students building out their identities for students to see their place in the wider world. So these are examples from an identity tree activity, which is actually an example of an activity in the civically engaged classroom. It provides an opportunity for students to explore and detail their roots, their skills, their values, their relationships, and legacies, amongst other things. And the other few things I just wanted to point out lastly, other opportunities for students to engage with this work. We have a rebranded group, PRISM. It was formerly known as SUFA. They rebranded it with the emergence of the Anti-Discrimination Club, since topics seem to overlap. So PRISM is now a more traditionally type of gay-straight alliance, serving members and allies of the LGBTQIA+ community. As Lil mentioned earlier, we're still working in setting meeting dates for Anti-Discrimination Club and recruiting for that. And also, lastly, there's a new course in development in conjunction with the Anti-Defamation League to foster student leaders through American history and literature embedded in our nation's journey for justice as we work toward realizing equality. And so right now, 2 of our teachers, an English teacher and social studies teacher, are really working around creating a course description for this. And our hope is to run it next year and then potentially do it in conjunction with the community and leadership class to integrate this work into that.
Great. All right. We're going to move on to Holton Richmond Middle School and then present their work.
Good evening. So to start with, I want to talk about some of the professional learning that we've done. So in August and September of this year, we drew on the work of Liz Kleinrock in Start Here, Start Now, which you've already seen and you'll see it again, as well as many other educators and researchers who promote the idea that anti-bias and anti-racist teaching begins with an examination of ourselves and our own identities. So through activities such as the identity map pictured at the center of the slide, each member of the staff thought about the various components of our own identities. And then we use the wheel of power and privilege pictured at the right to examine the aspects of our identities in which we hold more power and privilege and those in which we may be more marginalized. And this work set the stage to approach the year attuned to our own perspectives and biases as we work with students. This next quote, when social and emotional learning is implemented with a culturally responsive lens, educators can use SEL to cultivate equitable learning opportunities, responsive relationships, and inclusive practices. This comes from an organization you've heard us talk a lot about before, CASTLE, the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, from which we've drawn for several years here. So since the beginning of 21-22, we've devoted much of our professional learning time at Holton Richmond to achieving our school goals around social emotional learning. So in drawing from the work of CASTLE, we've really worked to develop student social emotional learning, but realizing it really has to be linked to culturally responsive teaching in order to create a safe and supportive learning environment to foster a sense of belonging for all students. This next slide shows some work that is happening in our 8th grade civics classes. Our civics teachers in August participated in the Civically Engaged Classroom professional development with their high school colleagues, and so drew this same activity. And they're really drawing upon one of the guiding principles in the history and social science curriculum frameworks, that an effective history and social science education incorporates diverse perspectives and acknowledges that perceptions of events are affected by race, ethnicity, culture, religion, education, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, and personal experience. So in order to help students be mindful of how their own perspectives of events are impacted by their identities, grade 8 civics teachers had students map out their identities through the identity trees seen here. This lens of personal identity then can serve as the framework through which the study of government and civic engagement can occur. And then finally, this I'm going to quote again, in this case, from the work of Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, the author of really widely read research around windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. She writes, when children cannot find themselves reflected in the books they read, or when the images they see are distorted, negative, or laughable, they learn a powerful lesson about how they are devalued in the society of which they are a part. Our classrooms need to be places where all the children from all the cultures that make up the salad bowl of American society can find their mirrors. So this slide represents just some of the new texts that are available for students to choose from in their English classroom libraries. We're working to diversify the reading selections that we make available for students to study and analyze so that all students can find texts that they regard as mirrors reflecting their own identities. And I'm going to hand it off to Julie.
Thank you.
Okay, so some of this will look familiar. So like the other levels, we began this summer with professional development work with the adults. So like the middle school, we use Start Here, Start Now as our sort of baseline text, but we had 2 additional texts that were aimed at early childhood and then upper elementary as well. And again, our lens that was very important to us at the elementary level was, again, the idea of making sure that we provide for all of our students windows, mirrors, and sliding doors. So headed off of our professional development work, all 3 of those texts, and I think, again, in the civically engaged classroom that the older grade levels used, and that I think Peter talked about too, it really begins with our identity work as ourselves as adults, but then also transferring that work to our students in the classroom. So at professional development, we did a lot of work about our own identities and the lens through which we see the world and what's happening around us. So then you can see examples here of what this work then looked like in 3rd grade classrooms across town with identity webs and name mapping and I am from poems. I like that first one, that I am from tacos and ice cream. So really kids digging into their own identity work. And the other part, Mary, if you go to the next slide, that was also very important to us coming out of the adult learning that we did this summer was that along with engaging in this identity work, classrooms needed to identify and come up with classroom agreements and community agreements. And like Peter said, all of this work is sort of setting the stage for having potentially harder conversations and challenging conversations. And even our elementary students are very capable of developing these agreements, talking about how are they going to talk to each other, what's important about how they treat each other in their classrooms. So all of that work has happened, the identity work and the building the community agreements. And we had teachers do some reflections on what that work felt like, and they shared it with each other. I read them all and put them into different themes that sort of stood out to me. And I think a couple are worth highlighting. Students felt seen. Students know more than we think they know. I think what really stands out to me is there was one 4th grade teacher who told me after they had done lots of identity work and conversations that she feels like she knows her students better than she's ever known them before. And it's November, so that's excellent. And so then headed into, similar to what you saw with the middle school and the high school, at the beginning of the year, we focused on building, we focused on read alouds that were about building community and discovering self-identities that went with the identity work we were doing in the classrooms. So this builds off the elementary goal of providing students pre-K through 5th grade with multiple culturally responsive read alouds throughout the school year. So those are just some examples of texts that we used at the beginning of the school year. And as we're headed into November and December, you can see the text shift a little bit. Still some identity work in there, some self-awareness, and shifting towards some social awareness work. So again, what's being read aloud to a pre-K class is different than a 5th grade class. But we're trying to be very purposeful in the text that we're picking to make sure that we're really hitting those mirrors, those windows, and those sliding glass doors. And the last slide is, in addition, in our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade classrooms, we're implementing new civics units this year. They're from Primary Source. And as you can see from the slide, they are similar topics to what we have traditionally taught in those grade levels. But we're providing students with
multiple resources, multiple sources to review, to look at, and the lens is, and the units are written with an equity lens to them. So that is what's happening at the elementary level. Thank you.
Thank you all. Are there questions either generally or specifically on any particular topic? Arthur?
No questions. I just want to, it's late, so I just want to summarize and say that it all looks good to me, what we're doing. I appreciate this. It's been part of the strategic plan, this current strategic plan. Obviously, the pandemic kind of slowed the process down, and we talked a lot about that last year. And Dave Thompson used to say all the time that, it's a process. It takes a while to get where you want to go, but this looks like we're heading in the right direction, and it's to me it's impressive. So thanks, guys.
Thank you, Arthur. Alice.
Yep, I agree. There's a lot of future progress that has been made. I guess one of my questions is, with a lot of these culturally responsive texts, have they been now replaced? Well, did they replace other, I guess what I hear from the community is more about why aren't they reading more of what we read?
Like
right?
the core text, the classics.
The classics. Thank you.
Okay.
So that's just my question. Put out to you all to address that in public, if you will. Have those classics been replaced with these books?
So this is probably, I guess, the second or third year that we've really been implementing the Teachers College reading units of study. And philosophically, they're really, those units and that approach to reading instruction is really all about student choice, moving away from the whole class novel that we all learned, that I taught. That's really, so we're really moving away from that philosophically and how we approach literature with kids, and that it's about teaching them. You can teach, 25 kids the same skills, but with them reading high interest, high engagement books that might be different for different kids. So it depends on the unit. Some are structured in a book club structure where you have 3, 4, 5 kids reading the same books, and so there's the discussion element. And then sometimes it's really just every child is just reading their own book that they've selected in collaboration with the teacher. So the classics or the canon are still available to students to choose, but in general, we're doing less of the whole class novel. I think most grade levels might do maybe one a year anyway.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin.
No, and just to clarify, and I can more speak to 9th through 12th grade ELA, I mean, you do have to expose them to the classics. So I know that that's still happening in the classroom. But I think, pairing it also with more contemporary pieces is also the way to go too. And just, I think, thank you to curriculum directors, principals, and the teachers who have been really putting in all this great work. And it's a lot, and it's a lot of change, and it's a lot of time. So thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And Jeff.
I mean, normally I would look at this and I would ask some questions about, are we going to track it? Are we going to have data? For 2 reasons. One, because it is late. But 2, I'm taking a bigger picture approach here, and I'm just impressed with the amount of resources that we seem to have dedicated to this, right? We've got work to do. We know we've got a plan to do it. I think whoever put the presentation together did it really well by having those books presented in front of us like this, right? I haven't read, Fry Bread or When We Are Kind, but, the entire picture of where we're going and the resources that are available to students now, whereas I'm guessing maybe it wasn't before, or maybe if it was more difficult to find. This is another part of this process and where we're trying to go. So thank you for that, and much success going forward.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that what you've presented to us all is a living example of how we're trying to become a more inclusive community, meet the needs of the students as those needs change and as new and different students from different cultures come to us, and in our sensitivity to trying to make sure that really every student finds a way to know that they belong, not just when it comes to school, but in life generally. So we appreciate what you're doing. It makes a lot of sense. I hope you'll report back to us periodically. Let us know how things are going. And thank you for coming tonight. Your enthusiasm and patience in this case is always appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Mary or Lisa? No?
Thank you.
No, very proud of the work.
Yes. All right. So let's move on to unfinished business. And that would be Robin in terms of the MASC resolutions and conference update.
Yep. So all the resolutions were passed.
Okay.
So that was simple.
That's simple, yeah.
Yep. No, a few amendments were presented, but they did not pass. So as written, the resolutions were passed.
Okay. Thank you. We'll go quickly to new business. The town budget policy. Every year the town presents a budget policy to us and basically asks for our comment. It's not something we would take a vote on. I think they just look for comments unless I'm wrong. Right. So if you would, has anybody read the draft and do you have any comments? This is, I think, pretty similar to what we've seen before in general. So can we pass on to the selectmen that we're content with this, or does anyone have any specific questions or comments?
Oh, I'm
I think just briefly, Eric, for our 2 new members. So there's 2 documents in there. One is around our goals as a town. So those change yearly. A lot of sustainability talk of changing from one-time revenue sources to sustainable revenue sources. Then the second document is if there's a disagreement over a funding level as we work through that, what the mechanism is between the different boards to come to an agreement. That remains largely the same, a slightly different format, but substantively the same process as previous years.
I just had a question with the number 3 under fiscal year 2023 budget goals, the restructure the information of technology related budgets. Is that implied that we'll be able to continue to update technology as far as in the building, but then have the money for Chrome, but you know what I mean? All of that, is that implied with that?
It is.
Okay.
It's part of our, with expanding of the town IT and then really focusing on infrastructure. So we talk a lot with DPW about how they take care of everything that if we moved out would stay with the building. So taking a similar approach with technology. So network switches and all of the wiring, security cameras, fob access readers, that some of those items will go under the control of town IT to help us continue to focus on the education and let them take care of the infrastructure. So in a similar model, but aligning the resources to make sure that we're always moving in the same direction and deepening that partnership.
Right, because I think technology budget is huge, and I want to make sure that everyone realizes we need that to
we will see through the budget process, but we are in full support of the increase that will be seen in the town technology budget, especially in order to really get onto a 5 to 7 year refresh cycle. So an old phone system we used to have for 30 years. Now these phones, it's 5 to 7 years you need to replace them. So like you said, putting in that funding structure to really make it so that we have the refresh cycle necessary to stay state of the art.
Awesome. Okay.
All right. Anyone else with questions or no? All right. I think we can safely say in general, we are satisfied with the budget policy and we thank the selectmen for letting us weigh in.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a suggestion that we do the order of business insofar as it includes the consent agenda and the minutes, but that we save communications, legislation, and subcommittee reports till our next meeting, unless someone has a particular subcommittee that they really would like to talk about and present information on, in which case that's great.
I'm fine with that.
No.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, so let's move on to the order of business. The consent agenda, which includes fundraising requests, field trip requests, the October 21st budget report, and personnel memo. Can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion about any item on the consent agenda?
I actually have a question because I don't know if it belongs here or not, but I think middle school parents were notified that there's not going to be a ski club. And I remember previous months, and I don't know where, but I feel like the club costs and fees were under order of business, and that's why I'm asking it here. Is there still an opportunity to do the ski club and bring it back? It seems like it was a decision made by the administration that parents and kids weren't really allowed to take part in. So if you wanted to comment about that.
Brendan, if you can, if you can speak to it.
So, to the best of my knowledge, no public announcement has been made that we are not doing a ski club. I was asked by a parent maybe 2 weeks ago about whether or not we were doing a ski club. And I believe my answer to them was we were looking at different options for busing, because it wasn't so much a funding question. It was that there are no buses currently available, and we had looked into coach buses.
Yeah.
But those were an exorbitant cost in terms of bringing kids to the mountain. So we were holding out a little bit to make a final determination to find out if Slater's driver situation had changed. So no determination has been made on ski club, although I'm sure if you were looking at that email that I sent, that the assumption would be that it would be a challenge for us to do ski club, but I have not sent out any definitive communication.
A parent had reached out to someone.
Yeah, to me.
No, it wasn't. There's an email. It wasn't from you, but it was just today that said that there was not going. So this could be our opportunity to say, yes, there will be a ski club, I guess.
Okay, so we'll go back and we'll readdress that. And,
okay.
Presented that we have that.
Yes.
We can go back.
A bus.
On transportation.
The budget.
I mean, I know that people were in fact looking into this transportation issue. So, yeah.
And we can talk creatively about what we can do that's outside of Salter. Salter's not able to do it.
That's all I
And also, if anybody would like to get their bus driver license, we are hiring.
Yeah.
Any of the school committee members, administrators.
National Guard.
It's
Maybe I'll want to bus them.
Not eligible for said services.
All right, and minutes.
Move to approve and release the minutes from the October 18th, 2021 regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And again, I think in light of the entire evening, let's dispense with the C, D, and E items until our next meeting, which is December 13th. Unless there's any disagreement. Okay. So with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you all, and good night, Danvers.